Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness podcast. I'm here with co-host Walter Dial, who is a tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors here in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building sellable business value and for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's transferable or sellable and then exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. A very common refrain we hear from business owners in conversations about exit planning is, why should I plan now? I'm not ready to exit. I'll start planning when I'm ready to leave. And, in one sense, it's entirely understandable that a business owner would respond that way. Why should I start planning now for something that I'm not ready to do now? I might not even be thinking about it right now. So why should I begin planning? I might have, me personally, I might have, Walter, the same response if I didn't know what we know at this point about what it takes to leave a business successfully.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Pat. I mean, the one thing that comes to mind, I think we say this a lot during our podcasts, is that the business owner who's in the best position to exit is one who, when the time comes, all the options are available to them. And the only way you're going to have every option available to you is if you plan early. The other thing is, I don't think business owners fully appreciate the time it takes to really accomplish a lot of the things that need to be accomplished to make your business the most valuable and the most sellable. So if they have a better understanding of that, I think that they can, have a little more energy towards the exit planning. But I fully agree with you. I mean, it takes a lot of time, a lot of days. It takes every ounce of energy just to stay afloat with the current, with what you're doing currently. So it's like anything else, exercise, diet, anything. It's you got to be disciplined to do it. That's why, one of the things I think can be really helpful is, I've seen, clients that have specifically engaged with you. And you're really good at just laying out small bites of what they can do every month, so that by the end, it's not overwhelming month to month, but at the end of the year, they've actually accomplished a lot towards their exit planning. So I think that's the approach people need to take. You just need to just do a little bit on a regular basis. And as long as you started early enough, you'll be in good shape. If you find yourself that you haven't started early enough, then it's a real nightmare, because you really are putting more time into the exit planning than you are running your business, because you have no choice, because you're too close to your exit.
Yeah, and then too, if listeners have listened to past episodes, they've heard us also say that exiting their business, their successful business, that's had great impact and much significance in the lives of many, will more than likely be the most significant and impactful event of their entire business career. And there's a lot at stake: financial goals, life after the business goals, family legacy goals. And that's just a few. I mean, it's a long list of what's at stake. And so that's what we want to do today, listeners, is we just want to have a conversation, and do this regularly, about why it's important to plan now. And Walter, I'm going to ask you in a second how we should kick the conversation or move it forward. But to your point a second ago about the bite-sized, monthly, just, 1, 2, or 3 things a month. Yeah, we learned that 10 years ago when we first started doing this work, that we could tend to overwhelm owners because there is so much to do. And my goodness, we'd come with list of things to do, and they already got list of things to do.
Right.
Just keep the lights on and keep things moving, right? Keep revenue where it needs to be. And it's not like their life is not busy already. And then we were coming with big, long list of basically creating another full-time job for them. So yeah, we've learned to help them bite off the bite size, or right size it, if you will, and just do it over time. And that's another thing that supports what we're trying to, again, today, encourage to get started. So you can budget time, you can budget money over a longer period of time, rather than cramming everything into 6 months or 1 year. So how should we move forward in the conversation?
Well, let's talk about, some of the decisions that need to be made and strategies that can be put in place, and kind of, how long that can take. So like, for instance, off the top of my head, I'm thinking, even early on, a business owner may have an idea about how they want to exit, in the sense of, are they hoping to build a legacy company that's going to be passed on to family or employees, or like a lot of our government contractor clients, are they hoping just to get in, build for 3 or 5 years and sell to a third party? If they're thinking of building a legacy company that they want to leave to employees or to family members, you've got the whole additional time frame of building owners amongst those groups.
Yeah, so yeah, that's right. So just deciding as to what exit route is going to be most ideal for your situation, be it transfer to kids if you have kids in the business, or key employees, management team, sale to a third party, financial or strategic, an ESOP, liquidation, which is usually a last resort. Which of these exit routes is going to be most appealing and most aligned with your goals, financial goals, legacy, values-based goals, goals for life after the business, whatever your goals are? It can take time to do that. I mean, we've got a client who took them 3 years to decide which exit, and they had options. They had built a business that was strong, healthy, sellable, and to your earlier point, so they had a number of options. They basically could have done whatever they wanted to do, but it took them 3 years to decide finally which route to take. So that in itself can take a while, and it can change.
Yeah.
You can change your mind.
Yeah. And the other, interesting thing about the whole choice of, which exit route you want to take, the closer you are to your exit, some of those options can just come off. By necessity, they're no longer on the table. So for instance, if you decide, you want to be out in 2 years, but you'd really like to transfer the business to your employees, and you haven't identified your key employees, or you haven't started the training process of making them owners, that's going to really be hard to do in 2 years.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So first off, just deciding what route to take can take 90 days. It can take a week, but it might take 3 years.
Yeah.
But then too, yeah, if let's say that in 1 or 2 or 3 years or 1 week, you decide, I'm going to transfer to either children or employees. Well, the actual transfer can take anywhere from 3 to 10 years to make that happen.
Right.
And let's talk about some of the reasons for that. A big reason is the financing of it. If an owner needs or wants to get money out of the business and they're transferring the business to their kids or the key employees, then usually the kids or the key employees don't have their own money or enough money to buy it. So structuring the financing can certainly take 10 years if there's self-financing involved, and then bank loans or whatever. But that the financing is one thing that can take a long time. What are some other things that can take a while with kids?
Well, I think one thing that can throw a monkey wrench into it is, and we've seen this, is oftentimes there's not great communication on the part of the owner, and he's operating, he's sailing along with this assumption that his kid wants the business or the key employee group wants the business. And especially in the family setting, it's really important to make sure that your child isn't feeling like, well, I don't really want to do it, but it's expected of me. That's not a recipe for success. And even with the key employee group, just because you have someone who loves their job, that doesn't mean that they're cut out to be an owner. So if your plan is to transfer the business to family or key employees, and you find out at the 11th hour that they really don't want it, or they're not really going to be good at it, well, you're back to square one.
Well, yeah, they could have been, they may be a tremendous key employee. And, but then that, as you mentioned, it's a ton of difference between being a star employee and owning all the risk. For one thing, you're not going to bed with all the risk hanging over your head like the owners do. And so, yeah, that can, and boy, owners, well, you hit on a number of things there. You're right. The communication piece is so critical, because more and more these days, it seems like the next generation or the generation after the next generation aren't real keen, if you will, on owning businesses that baby boomers have built. And so if you're making that assumption, like they're going to get real excited about the prospect of it, even if they are qualified to be owners, you may find that their value system just ends up not allowing them to take that step. And so if that's your plan, you may be disappointed when you go to try to make it happen. But then too, whatever you can do on the front end before you even begin the transaction, to evaluate, which we can do this, by the way, candidates for ownership. It's going to serve you and them, because remember, your future success after you leave the business financially could very much depend on directly their future success as an owner, because of the financing and the way it's structured, oftentimes self-financing and so on and so forth. So you want to do everything you can on the front end before you start to execute the transaction to ensure their success as an owner, ownership skills. And that's something that we've actually started to do, is train future and current successors. And we're excited about that and really enjoying it. What are some of the other issues that don't give up control before you get in these internal transactions? Don't give up control of the business until you've gotten everything out of it financially that you want to get out of it, because you might not if it doesn't work out. What else comes to mind, Walter?
Well, I think what the point you just made is really good about giving up control. But kind of not really a flip side to what we're talking about, but I think it kind of goes along with it, is don't start your exit too early. In other words, you don't have a business that's 2 years old and you have a guy who's been working for you for a year, and it's like, hey, I'm going to make him an owner. There's lots of what we call synthetic ways to do that: phantom stock, bonus plans, stuff like that, which make a lot more sense. You don't want to bring owners in too early thinking that, hey, I'm already got my exit plan going, I'm doing great, because too many things can go wrong. And you really don't want a minority owner in a situation like that. So.
Nope, you don't. We talk a lot about sellable business, transferable business. And, that involves the owner not being too central. Of course, a strong financial performance, differentiated in the marketplace, strong cash flow, management team, so that the owner isn't the hub of everything in central, and a number of financial and non-financial value drivers that strengthened over time lend toward a transferable or sellable business, so an asset that someone else is going to want to own.
Yeah.
Well, too often owners, I think, based again on our experience, and it's completely understandable, again, it's completely understandable, that they might not think so much about building a sellable or transferable, a sellable business if they're thinking about transferring the business to their kids, or particularly their kids, but insiders as well. And so they go about doing it, and the business, in a sellable business, just a strong, healthy business, got strong systems in place and so on and so forth. Well, if you don't have all of that in place and you transfer it to your kids or the insiders, and it's not built as a sellable or healthy business, then your future financial situation's at risk. And so then, let's talk about this, because it's related to the sellable, building a sellable business. Closing the value gap between the actual value of the company and what dollars they want or need out of the business. You do valuations all the time. And I know you've said it not a few times that most of the time business owners think their business is worth more than it is. And it's not infrequent where we have learned that they don't have an updated personal financial plan, knowing what they're going to need. So, but anyway, talk a little bit about the importance of accurate information when it comes to an estimate of value of the business, and then we'll talk about closing that value gap.
Yeah. So, a few things. So, it's really hard if you're not familiar with the marketplace to really put a value on your own company, because companies are there's a lot of unique attributes in each company. So, you may know somebody at your club or in your industry who sold his company for X, and you're thinking, well, my business is similar to his, so mine's probably worth that. Well, it could be that he had one very large client, so that drove down the value of his business, or it could be that you have one very large client, which is going to drive down the value of your business. Two companies where the net profit is $500,000, they can get there very differently. One could have $1 million in revenue and a 50% margin. The other could, have to bring in $10 million to squeeze that out. So you just can't come up with a value of what you think your company's worth based on what other companies have sold for, unless you really know all the details, and you really probably never will. The other thing is that
so it's important, let me just point out again.
Yeah.
It's important that to calculate whether or not you have a value gap, and we'll explain what that is in a second, it's important to have accurate information. So meaningful planning requires accurate information. And so to have an accurate, not speculative valuation of what your business is absolutely essential for meaningful planning.
Right, exactly. And the other thing where it's really important as far as the timing issues we're discussing is, for a lot of clients, their business is worth, they can take more out of their business than they're going to get the first few years in selling it. They can make a really good income. So that oftentimes, if there's a gap, meaning that the amount they need to retire successfully is less than the value of their company plus their other assets, that might mean, okay, I need to keep working for another 2 years because I can take a lot of money out of the company during those 2 years and add that to my savings or investment assets. So that's another area where the timing is really important.
Yeah. So let's say that Sarah, business owner Sarah, got with her financial advisor, and financial advisor says, you want to retire, conventional retirement in 3 years, and you've told me everything you want to do in retirement. It's going to cost $5 million. So right now, Sarah, you and your husband have $1 million in assets outside of your business. Sarah, what's the value of your business? Okay, well, it's very important at that point that Sarah has an accurate estimation of what her business is, so that the financial advisor who is quantifying the resources, everything outside of the business that can produce income, as well as the sale proceeds from the business, is added together, it's quantified, and then subtracted from that 5 million. So let's say that the business, Walter Dial, evaluates it and it's worth $1 million, fair market value. So she's got quantified resources of 2, she needs 5 in 3 years. So she's got a gap, a value gap or a financial gap of 3 million that she's going to have to make up in 3 years. Well, if she's going to have any chance of doing that, more than likely it's going to have to come through pretty significant growth in her business in 3 years. All right. So back to our why plan now. This is a big reason to plan now, because now to build that asset, the business, to the point where she's going to be able to fill that value gap or financial gap, it's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take money and resources to do it, so on and so forth. And so she may have to extend that 3 years out to 5 or even 10 in order to make up that $3 million.
Yeah. And two points to follow up on that, Pat. One is, for most business owners, the business is far and away their most valuable asset. So if you have the value wrong on that, your planning is really bad. The other thing is,
Exactly. Yeah.
And the other thing is, a lot of times people will say, well, my business is worth $10 million. Well, by the time you sell it, pay taxes, transaction fees, you'll be lucky to have 6 million. So if you're putting 10 million into your calculations, you got a big problem there.
Yeah, and I want to talk about taxes in a second too.
Okay. The other, on a positive note, if you have the time to build the value of your business, you get a really big bang for your buck. Because if you think about it, companies are sold based on a multiple of some benefit stream, cash flow, EBITDA, whatever it is. So there's really, when you make good moves to build value in your business, you're growing the value in two ways. One is you're increasing that benefit stream. And then the other is, as the business improves with great systems, great people, diversifying the owner's role, your multiple could also go up. So let's say you're starting from day one with $100,000 benefit stream and a multiple of 3. Well, your business is worth 300,000. You spend 2 to 3 years really growing that value. All of a sudden, your benefit stream is now at 400, and because you've done these things, your multiple was 4. Now you're at 1.6 million.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the whole idea. Yeah.
Huge. So
to grow the financial performance while at the same time strengthening these value drivers that result in a higher multiple.
Yeah.
It can be very significant increase in the value of the business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why even that example you gave where it seemed like, wow, this person's never going to get to 5 million. Depending on the nature of their business, they could certainly get there. They could certainly get there even within 3 to 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Now, and this is where it's great to have the distinctive that we do and the work that we do. We're agnostic as to which route an owner chooses. We just want to help them figure out the best route. And every once in a while, it is liquidate for asset value, whatever you can get out of it, and save as much money as you can outside of the business with your wealth manager. Because, and here's some reasons. And this is this is just data that we gather, and we just get to know the owner. And the owner eventually just says to us, you know what? I get it. Okay, I'm gonna have to work hard for another 5 years to build staff, to build systems and manage all this stuff. And I'm tired. I don't want to do it. I really don't want to do it. And my value gap is $1 million. Well, another option for that owner might be, let's say they are profitable and they're, they've got strong EBITDA, but they just don't want to invest the time and energy and resources in building a bigger business. They might just set up a defined or cash balance plan with their financial and just sock as much money away outside of it to accomplish their goal. But that's just being very self-aware. And sometimes owners just need someone like us to talk to them and say, and draw these things out. So it becomes clear to them, oh, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I'll just sell it for what I can because I don't want to put all the energy into it.
Right. And that's not a failure. Everybody has their own perspective on it. So as long as, the only time it's, and I don't want to use the word failure necessarily, but what's kind of sad, I think, for us is you see someone who has worked really hard to build the business, and maybe they haven't been doing everything exactly right. So the business isn't as valuable as it, probably could be. They've waited too long to really do exit planning. They're burned out, and they're just saying, look, I just want to get out and see what I can get for it. That's sad because, they've spent their whole life building something. And then at the end of the day, it's just, they really never really see the fruits of their labor other than.
Well, yeah, it kind of gets back to the statement mentioned at the start of the podcast, just that why plan now? I'm not ready to exit. Well, when you get ready from an emotional perspective, maybe you just one day decide, I'm done. Or your spouse decides for you, you're done.
Yeah.
Or something just pushes you out. I mean, maybe it's health.
Right.
We have a client right now who has severe health issues. It could be something like that. Well, you might be ready to leave, but your business just may not be ready to be sold or transferred for what you're going to need to get out of it.
Yeah.
So that's, okay. Talk about taxes some here and say, oh, one other thing though, before we talk about that is back to the transfer to children or employees for a second. We run into this fairly often where an owner has 2 or 3 insider employees and they're thinking, and maybe they've all, those 2 or 3 employees have indicated interest in being owners. Well, all of those things we said earlier still apply. Can they be owners? Are they qualified, or do they have the temperament, and so on and so forth? But then let's assume they are. And let's assume that there's 3 of them and we've evaluated them, they can be owners. They may work really well together as employees, but oh boy, if they all become owners together, that's a whole different ballgame. And so you better be clear on roles, authority, contribute. Oh, there's a list of things. As a matter of fact, it's time for us to have David Gage back on and talk about the partnership charter again, which we're able to do. But don't assume that just because they're working well together as employees, that they're going to work together in harmony as partners. Just one more caution there. But anyway, what about tax? What in regard to tax, closing the gap, the value gap can take anywhere from 1 to 10 years or more. Just deciding on what exit route to take can take 1 week or 3 years. Transferring the business to kids or employees, 3 to 10 years. What about tax planning? How long can that take?
Well, that could take 10 years too. I mean, even if you're a C Corp and you decide you want to become an S Corp to try to avoid double tax, well, you got to wait 5 years before you can successfully do that. So that's a big one. If you have, small business stock, you have to hold that for a qualified period of time. So, these things can come in, the holding periods can come into play. And at the end of the day, you're probably looking at, if you live in a state that has a tax, you're probably looking at 30 to 35% of what you get out of the business of your sales price going to taxes. So it's a big hit. Now there's if you plan ahead of time, you can do things like maybe put some of your shares into a trust, things like that. But these things shouldn't be done the day before the sale. The IRS doesn't really like that. So all that stuff takes time.
Yeah, we're talking mostly about income tax right there, but then there's a state planning tax too.
Yeah.
You may be philanthropic or charitable, and and you may exceed the federal unified credit in regard to your assets. And so there's some work that can be done there to not just minimize income taxes, but estate taxes, and maybe even while at the same time benefiting charities and your family, you can reduce the potential estate tax burden downstream. So tax planning is not ideally something that, that's another thing that owners that we know they don't have in view until they're ready to sell. And then sometimes not even then, they'll be thinking, I can sell a company for 5 million. Okay, but what are you really going to end up with?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're sadly awakened to that truth real quick.
Yeah, but it is interesting because the qualified small business stock and the built-in gains tax, when you convert from C to S, they both have 5-year holding periods. And I have a client who had he had what he didn't even know could have been QSBS stock. He had left the company. He had been one of the founders of a company. He had left it. and he had left it after like 3 years, but he had some stock when he left. Then 1 year he told me he had sold the stock, or the company had been sold, and he had sold his shares. And I said, well, check with them and see if it was, if it was qualified small business stock. He started asking around. They literally sold the company less than 1 week to meet the 5-year holding period.
Oh,
qualified business
no.
stock.
Oh, you're kidding.
He would have had a $10 million exemption.
Oh, that
He had
pains
no
to
control
hear
over
that
it.
story.
Yeah, he had no control over it, but it's actually someone you know.
Okay.
But
Yeah, because
those are the
I
things that,
wasn't working with that client.
no.
I remember that
You
story.
know him personal.
Wow.
So, just so that, right there's a 5-year holding period that comes into play for things. So, tax planning can take time. And like you said, a lot of times, if you are going to transfer your business to family members, maybe part of your strategy is to do it through gifting, and to reduce the transfer tax, gift tax. You might want to do that slowly over a period of years to take advantage of the annual exclusion. So, that could be a 5 to 10 year process.
Well, I can. And then there's ways to generate income through estate planning tools like GRATs and things like that, while at the same time transferring and reducing the estate.
Yeah.
So, but all of this takes time. And so listeners, just keep this in mind. None of these things are real wise to do in 6 months to a year time frame. It usually doesn't work out real well. And so selling to a third party, if you're going to sell your business, and like we were just yesterday talking to a business owner, and she is thinking she might want to sell real quick within a year or two. Well, if that's true, and she's done all this work about financial gap analysis and all like that, and her business is sellable and marketable, and in this case it is, then that can take 6 months to a year, maybe 2. If it's sellable, someone's going to want to buy it, and she's willing to get, or she or he is willing to negotiate on the price, then usually it can be done in 6 months to a year. That's if, though, it is sellable for the amount of money that you want to get out of it. And that's actually, too, speaking to the transaction, you may have to stick around for 2 or 3 years in an earnout situation, depending on how the deal is structured. But the actual getting to the deal table and striking the deal can take place in 6 months to a year. But many years prior to that, you've been building it in a way that it is sellable for what you're going to need to get out of it. Any thoughts about that last piece, Walter?
No, I think that's exactly right. I would just fully agree with that.
Okay. Well, so we could go on and talk about this for a lot longer today, but listeners need to be moving on and do other things in their life. And
they need to start doing
if
their
they've lasted
exercise.
this long in the conversation. So how about, let's just close this out. But as Walter does that, though, listeners, please get started. Oh, and you can get started today. You can go to exitreadiness.com. There is a free assessment there. Take you 15 minutes, and we'll send you, it's free, send you a 12-page report scoring you in 4 key planning areas. And it'll just give you a good idea as to where you're strong in regard to your business and planning, and where you might need some help. And so exitreadiness.com, the free exit assessment.
And listeners, as always, thanks very much for tuning in and listening. If you want help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, You can reach Pat at 301-859-0860, or as he mentioned, go to the website. It's really, really a great website. And you can reach me at 301-951-9090. As always, we thank you for joining us. And until next time on the Exit Readiness podcast, this is Walter Dial and Pat Ennis signing off.